Good evening and welcome. It's a bit of a scramble. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties. So this is the first creative Heartlands kind of meet and greet. With me tonight, I have three filmmakers, two of whom have been working together recently on a movie called Skylark. And I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their background. And once they've done that, then we'll get into a little discussion about making films and making animation in the SLR region, and we'll see how it goes. We expect to go to about 7:30 tonight, and we are recording this, so hopefully this will be available for everybody subsequently. Okay, I'm going to start just on the side, and I'll introduce, this is Rose Byrne, who is a writer and has produced something, and I'll pass it over to Rose. If you could give us a quick introduction of your filmmaking background and how you got to be here.
How yes, as you said, I'm Rose Byrne, moved from Dublin 20 years ago. Always wanted to write, writing's my passion. Start writing about 15 years ago. Short stories, plays and scripts. And I met Christine and we made two films together. One in 2020 before the lockdown, and then Skylark, which was a longer shoot. Mm-hmm. And I've had plays produced and stuff, so that's me in it. Mm.
Okay, we'll keep it brief and then we'll go back into it. But what's interesting is the fact that you have worked in other mediums. You've worked in radio, and you've worked in plays, and then you've transitioned. And maybe I think at some point we might discuss the difference in terms of writing for that as a medium. Writing is writing, but it's different for that. And likewise, Stephen may have some views on that in terms of writing for animation is again different. And people think they're all exactly the same, and they all bring their own special things to it. So let me pass on to Christine Braithwaite, who will tell us a little bit about what her background is.
Yeah, hi, I'm Christine Braithwaite. My background is originally camera operating. I started my career in Belfast over 25 years ago, working on feature films like Divorcing Jack, Thomas the Tank Engine, Pucknoon, oh God, so many Bloody Sundays. And I started off as a runner, and then I graduated up to casting assistant, and the work kind of dried up in the North and Northern Ireland, and I moved back to England and I did another course, finished the course, and then I went on to work on Emmerdale and Coronation Street as a camera operator. Decided I wanted to move back home because that's where my mum's side of the family is from, and I've been writing and just trying to meet other people in the west of Ireland, in Roscommon and Mayo, Sligo, Leitrim, trying to make films. And again, like what Rose said, met Rose, we've made two films. I've worked on other films as well with other filmmakers. Basically, we've just been making films on a shoestring, and just trying to like build up a team of people who are either up and coming, just out of college, just fancy a bit of filmmaking. And that's what we've kind of been doing. Okay,
which is kind of interesting that you came together, coming from different backgrounds. Yeah. Rose obviously is a writer, and you've teamed up. And the essence of sometimes difficulties in working in an environment like this, which is a low starting base, is actually the connection of people, yeah, and finding people to work together. And I know you've had some difficulties yourselves in terms of Skylark. Again, we may come back to that, time allowing. But we've got a diverse range there in terms of coming from other genres to working with film, and coming from a television background, and coming back to, to the Sligo, Leitrim, Roscommon area. And another person who's come into the region is obviously Stephen Fagan, who is founder of Studio Media, and you work in the area of animation, but I will let you give us a background on where you've come from and how you ended up here.
Excellent. Co-founder of Studio Media, myself and two other partners, Jerry, Toomey and Sean Cunningham. We started Studio Media in 2.5 years ago now. It feels like it's a lot longer, to be honest with you. But I suppose I've been working on animation for the last 20 years, and then relocated to the West in 2017, and then we set up Studio Media in 2019. It just how Studio Media came about was really a serendipitous moment where Jerry was talking about a project he wanted to make, and Sean and myself were working on a project. I was very much myself and Jerry having a conversation saying, I need a studio. And a few weeks later, talking to Sean over a cup of coffee, was like, hey, trying to set up the studio. And that was really it. So the studio's been going now for like 2.5 years. We've worked on a number of projects, some clients on our podcast, a lot of streamers. The biggest thing we've done so far was I think for Hulu for Pen 15, the animated special for Pen 15, along with a lot of music videos, game trailers and so on, so forth. A few other projects for the other streamers which I can't talk about, but yeah, it's going well.
And let's go back to the kind of the origins in terms of like coming up with ideas and working on material. Obviously, to make feature films, it's difficult in terms of the budgetary requirements, and then it's a long form narrative. And this will be something similar for you if you're working across a longer form, which is in television. And then there's different audiences, from young audiences to so forth. Just what's your approach, Rose, in terms of working within, say, short film? So how do you approach that, coming from another background, as it were, in terms of theatre or plays and radio plays?
Do you mean the writing process?
Yes, the writing.
I have no set. I wouldn't be a writer that I'd write every day. I sort of, when I write, I get into things. I'd either come up with a character first, maybe, or a story, and I'd be dwelling on this for maybe months before I'd even put a word down. And I do stuff with pen and come up with the idea and develop it. Regarding filmmaking, it's just I found that the more experience you get as a writer, you have an instinct as to which works as a story or a film or a play. You know, a play would tend to have a lot more dialogue, where the film is show as much as you can without saying it. So that's the sort of approach. I put an awful lot of time into thinking about and visualizing it, and I sort of visualize what way this is going to look. And a play is completely different because it's live and it's the characters, you know, you have to, and you just, I don't know, is my answer. I just have an instinct for it. Yeah. That's all I can say.
Okay, no, that's fine. And let me just jump across to you in terms of animation, Stephen. I mean, what's the approach to that? Because animation, as people are probably aware, is such a long form in terms of production. You know, it takes a long time. And, you know, as we were discussing before we met, sometimes people can be glib, so just write that and sure they can draw anything. But how is the approach for that, or how do you find the material for animation, and how do you control the writing process?
It's like I would say, like a lot of the writers we would need to work with are like people who have like live action and filmmaking experience more so, because animation, those animators they can be better than like doing some really good animation. So the writing process really comes from different angles. Usually we have a very like long development process, and the reason why there's so much time spent in development is because it takes so much time and effort and money to produce. So where film, like, you know, is costly to produce, you can get done relatively quickly and cost effectively, as opposed to animation. So we have to be sort of really, really strict and really stringent on getting everything right at the start. So, like, for example, like, you'd edit an animated film at the start of the film in the animatic and storyboard phase, more so than you would at the end. There'd be a small bit of it at the end, but mainly it would be done at the very, very start of the production. So when we're writing, it's really about making sure like everything is really, really clear, and there's no room for like the director, whoever it might be, to like ad lib as much. Do you know what I mean?
It's an interesting point I can bring Christine on, because obviously when you're working with a script and you're on set and you're working with actors, there can be a certain amount of kind of improvisation around that. An actor will interpret what's written. You may well even have the writer around, and you say, oh, we need to change this, or it's rained and we suddenly have to go to rain cover and we have to change the scene. I mean, how do you deal with the written word, as it were, coming at it from a director's point of view?
Yeah, well, as I said, like, I came from cameras to directing. I think that's why I love directing, because you kind of can see the problems as being behind a camera, and you can see other directors and producers and how they solve the different problems, and the actors always come to you and like ask for advice, have they hit the mark? Can I do anything better? Can I help you anything? And I think that's why I love directing at the moment and love writing, and that's where I've kind of gone down that path now, and producing as well. I'm a bit of a problem solver.
Yeah.
And
let me ask you, because and we don't want any squabbles,
yeah.
But as somebody who is also a writer and somebody who is a director, how do you handle that process of receiving a script in terms of in a collaboration? And to an extent this might apply, and feel free to pitch in as the animator and the producer, in terms of somebody writes something and changing it, dealing with the writer.
I think when Rose came with expiry date, she just wanted to hand the script over, and obviously I had no money, and I had no crew or anything, and I said to Rose, right, I just knew with Rose that she was a strong person. I said, how would you feel about co-producing it with me? And she did a really good job. And I told her things we needed to do, insurance, food, all the covered costs, a bit of money for the set, everything, and she tackled it really well. And that's what I loved about working with Rose. And then with Skylark, I said, right, you need to produce this. This is your baby. This is your script. You already know how to fish in it, and yes, the money is the whole dreaded thing. No one likes to talk about money and how you're getting your money and blah, blah, blah. But, you really did handle it really well. And I think, Rose does make a good writer producer, because she does see the problems, and we did have a lot of problems, and even though she doesn't want to, no one wants their scripts to be, changed, but you have to find solutions how you can, have plan B. We were always talking about, okay, we can't do plan A, so let's do plan B and C, and that was the problem.
It's an interesting idea, the idea of writer producer, which happens much more in television, and in some ways much more in the American model than here. But here, I think you get many more people who are writers, and then they wish to direct what they've written, or else they're directors who want to write something for themselves. So it's a different process. I mean, when it comes to the direction on animation, perhaps you could just give us a little insight into that, because maybe people, especially from the live action world, don't really know. I mean, the process of going through it. How, in essence, how is something directed? How is an animation directed?
Well, I wouldn't like to say I'm a director. I mean, I work with really good directors, and I wouldn't like to take too much sort of.
But how do they work, Stephen, in terms of that? Might be interesting to see. We know what live action directors do in terms of working with the actors and the crew and so forth. When it comes to animation, that might be a little bit more of an unknown world.
It is, and I suppose there's a difference. It's mainly what we've always seen from ever been on a live action set and an animation studio. I mean, the director is still the director. They're still directing the vision, still sort of bringing the vision across, and from story to the screen. However, the difference is it just takes longer. So the culture is massively different. So what I've ever witnessed in a live action set is very fast paced. People will shout, "Would you get this done?" And it's generally hopefully respectful, but it can be a lot of egos and so on. That can sustain for 2 or 3 weeks, but doing that for a year, 6 months to a year, it's unsustainable. So the culture is very much different. How you deal with and treat people in animation studios is very opposite to being in a sort of high stress situation like filmmaking. So it's not to say either one's better or worse, it's just the hour to the hour. So a lot of animation directors are generally much more laid back and just sort of try to go into more detail about specific things, and they sort of look at every single scene together, and where you're directing, you'd sort of see, okay, directing the scene, and maybe have an assistant director or a second unit director, where you're seeing everything and scene by scene as it comes into it. But an animation director could see multiple scenes over a day, multiple scenes, and or else you might not see anything for a week or two. So it's
and because of the cost and the time involved in animation, if a director looks at something that an animator has put together, even if it's animatics, at that stage, would they redirect and say, we want some changes and we think with this and the character isn't doing enough of this and so forth? Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, an animatic stage is very much you're refining until it's done in animation. So you look at almost like a funnel. It starts off with a broad idea from the script, and that's sort of brought down to sort of tangible things, and then the animatic happens, and the animatic, you do your work there and then refine it down, and it goes into more and more detail as you go until the very end bit, the compositing and the post when it's done. So at every single stage, like there will be like the director will have input onto the cleanup where or a colour where we're generally, you know, there's a really clear idea there. But even then, like how the cleanup is done, like the actual final line drawings are done, the animation's done, that's for hand drawn animation. But like every single part of the production is really sort of looked at in detail, you know. So I mean, it's very much the decision making process is different because the narrative of film, like you're picking scenes out to help drive the narrative. You're doing that in animation, but it's almost if you have full control over every single part of the scene. Like every single thing in animated thing is correct. Like everything from the sky to the ground to I think a filmmaker just take clothes or they take clothes for granted. They can just go to the shop and buy clothes. We have to design those clothes. And those clothes have to be like animation friendly. So if it's hand drawn animation, if you draw someone loads of lines in it, like this short, like the animators would kill me if I designed a short like this because like someone has to clean that up and draw all the lines in between it. But I suppose there's lots more things to think about in terms of design and planning there. But yeah, so the director will really sort of have to really have a really sort of clear, tight vision of what they want to achieve. Really, and where in live action, I'm assuming that you can have a general idea where you want to go, but you don't know where you want to get till the edit. But you have to be really clear before we go into production what it's going to be like. You know?
Let me ask you a little bit about teams. You know, in terms of, I mean, and have a think about this in terms of your own teams, because there's some difficulties sometimes in finding crew. But for an animation team, if you're doing an animated series for BBC or RTE Junior, I mean, how many people might be involved in that? We get a sense of the credits when we watch something, but for something, the work that you're doing, how many animators are you, or many people within the production team are you running with at a given time?
There's currently, I think, 26 people in the studio. We're working on, they're not here, they're working remotely, but they're working on one TV series. And probably there's a music video just finished production as well. But that depends on the length of the project and the quality you want to hit. So we kind of go with seconds per week. So some animations will go with 20 seconds per week per animator, which is
how many seconds you say? 20 seconds a week.
Yeah, some animations do
40.
40
Christine will be having canaries here.
What's that
20
mean?
seconds a week.
40
As a
seconds.
budget.
20 seconds of footage per animator per week.
Yeah.
Per week. So we go from anything from 4 or 5 to 25 thereabouts.
Right. Okay.
That's for one part of the production. We've other productions where we've hit like 25 seconds by design or 25 seconds by design, and I look at that as probably like that's minuscule for me. Like unlike 35 is how are we going to convince people that we can do 35 seconds a week? That's a lot for us. So it just goes to show that the scope. So it really comes down to like how it's designed and how it looks, you know.
And that those crew may well be spread everywhere. This is the difference in animation, where obviously a crew and in live action they have to come together and so they work together. But I mean, for you guys, do you work remotely? Could your animator literally be anywhere?
Well, obviously we utilize the Section 41 tax credit a lot, so we have to be based in Ireland mainly for productions. But international productions where we do the music video, we can use international talent there, but they really do come together. They don't. Ideally, we would be here in a physical space together, but we do like. There's definitely camaraderie and communication and a culture and a team feel about what we're working on. And I suppose like shorter form project to do that, where you really sort of feel like we're making something cool, and you can see the progress and things coming out. So I mean. Like, yes, everyone's working digitally and working remotely and working all over the country. However, when we're working on projects and we collaborating and it's just like this natural thing of look what I did, and everyone's sort of sharing what they're doing. It's a very collaborative thing. So there is an idea of an animator being stuck in the room drawing. I remember being in college and working on my final year film and had the light box on. I was like 6 o'clock in the morning, I was walking on the light. My mum came in, opened the blinds. I was like, "Go away, man!" And there's like vampire feel to it. That's what people probably think of being an animator is like. But also, it's very collaborative, and it's very like you have to work with the people. Like I'm not comparing, but I'm assuming that there are cases where someone can actually go out and shoot a film on their own. He can do it in animation. And I know a really good, super talented director who's just finished her own short and she's done most of it on her own. But generally, it's done like in a collaborative sense.
Okay. And of course, we know in terms of live action, it's done in the collaboration. But you know, how do you find that in terms of pulling people together and finding the people? I know you guys had some problems with Skylark and finding crews and stuff, which is something that filmmakers in the region maybe are going to experience, and which we're within Creative Heartlands, we're going to try and at least get people together by having events like this and letting people know that there are people who have content. Because it is strange. People involved in the communication business are often not great at communicating. But I mean, what was your experiences on? And this doesn't matter. You can tell us in terms of Skylark and maybe even reference some of the other films. The difficulty of getting crew in SLR.
Yeah, it was difficult. July, we shot it in July, so it's a busy time of year for filming anyway. I don't know if animation's the same, I don't know if it's a seasonal thing, but June, July is a busy time. So we couldn't really get anybody up for certain departments.
It was the animal wrangler was tough, and getting, because not many in Ireland, and then getting the right location. We managed, we got a good location,
and with COVID as well, because it was like no one really wanted you in their house as well, and that kind of played a havoc.
And that was a longer shoot. That was a 5-day shoot compared to the one last year.
Okay. And so in terms of finding crew, let's just talk about that a little bit now, because there may be people listening at home or people watching the recording subsequently. I mean, what do you think? And so I know it's specialized in terms of animation, but it's the same thing. What do you think could improve to bring up the level of people or to find people in the area?
I think we did put calls out on the SLR, and obviously if they're not around or they're busy, but we were looking for first, and luckily we found Emma, who was actually local. She was a brilliant first, and Ema, who was in Sligo, again was a brilliant script supervisor. Post is a bit of a problem. Sound was a bit of a problem. Like costume and makeup, you could basically get somebody who's done a bit of costume or makeup kind of outside of the TV film, maybe theatre background, to get that. But we've just found sound was difficult, and then the post as well. There's no, hardly any dubs.
I'm a dub.
Another different time. There we go. You're hired. But I think that we just finding people around you, and knowing what the background, because there's a lot of people that are good at many things. It's not just like myself, like camera, writer, director, producer. I'd say I'm wearing that hat. Whereas people just put themselves out as just one, or maybe they just do the one thing. But I think just finding people was just difficult.
And how big was the crew on Skylark, for example?
Was it 5?
Not big enough.
5?
There was he was rolled in. He was the prop maker.
I think there's 7 in the end.
7.
Yeah, 7.
So that's a very small crew.
And a lot of locations.
Yeah.
A lot of locations and a lot of moving in the day. In one day we could move about 2 or 3 times. It was like a mini feature film.
It was,
really was. And with the animals as well. There was more fans with birds. I've never seen so many birds in my life. They had 2 fans up with the birds.
We were lucky.
We must have had 50 odd birds.
We were lucky with the animal wrangler, and the 2 animal wranglers. They brought down a lot of boards with them, and they looked at. They were great, weren't they? Shay Cullen and what was the other girl's name? Pamela. Pamela Scullion. They were great, but it was the hottest week. Remember in July it was really hot. They were all sweltered, but we were lucky with the actors now. I've a few contacts in Dublin, so we got the main character Damien Lumsden, and Christine approached casting agency, and we're very lucky to get Sonia McCarthy. She was brilliant in the part. The 2 of them, Poor and Damien, just hit it off, didn't they?
And again, sorry for interrupting, with the actors, I put a call out. Well, we already had Damien. I put out because we needed a certain look. She was quite dark hair, swervy skin. So we put calls out, and unfortunately, the ones that I knew locally, they were busy on other films or theatres. So every project we've had we've always put, we've always tried to keep local as well. We're really big
Yeah.
on keeping local,
Yeah.
And how do you find in terms of the animation? Because obviously they are specialist skills. I mean, where do you draw your crew in from? I mean, are they all coming via Dublin?
Not necessarily. I suppose like animators have a bit of a boom in Ireland, really. But like, they're all like, there's a lot of like, Carson, Dublin's Barry Farmer, and there's like IDT, but we have Athlone now, Lara Kenny, Limerick IT. There's a few other animation courses popping up around. So there's a lot of like animators who have trained abroad and like kind of relocated to Ireland as well. So there is a sort of cohort in Ireland. So it's not really it is an issue. The demand in the industry is increasing, like because there's more demand. Like animation itself has been becoming more in demand because of like the COVID where film production couldn't happen. That there's a need for content, so more animation is being made. So obviously more animators are needed, and then more animators needed to more scarce. So we haven't yet, untouchable, we haven't won for a while. It's reached the problem where we just can't get the people. And I suppose it comes from a fundamental belief that we're an animation studio and what we believe what a studio is. Like a studio is just really a place that like empowers the artists and helps the artists work and leads the artists. So it's not really about some like egomaniac type thing. Just my idea, it's literally how we all work together. And that's how we think about our studio. It's more of it's a place of how we all work together than anything else. So
this is a different operational structure than if you like the American model when Sullivan Bluth came, and that created a certain culture of animation. So do you see as an artist, an animation studio, there's a different feel for that? I've never heard it explained like that.
Yeah, well, I think like all studios have to sort of realize that they're only a studio because they have people. And the most important thing is the resource of people, and looking at the people as like the most important thing of that, it's how you treat those people is what makes you a studio or a good studio or not. If you treat those people well and empower them to be creative, empower them to do good work, they'll enjoy working with you and they'll stay with you. If you can't empower people to stay and empower people to do great work, that's how effective you are as really the measure how effective you are as a studio. So I know it sounds probably a bit arrogant to say it. I don't know if everyone's going to agree with me or not, but I just think a studio it really is the people that's in it. It's not the walls, it's not the equipment, it's the people that have it. And if the people aren't there, doesn't matter how good the equipment is, no one can manage it. So it's really so for us it's really about like how many people like we can manage and lead and support and like nurture as well. So it's not really getting the people as much as managing them and leading.
And just taking that topic on board, I mean, what can be done? I think that the listeners will be, the viewers will be interested in like what can be done to bring people up, would you say? Like even let's look at it in terms of live action stuff. I mean, if you were just, but no one here is the fairy godmother where we can just kind of even Stephen couldn't sort that one out with an animation. So but what do you think can be done? What do you think can be done to bring people up and improve the capabilities and the range of people and the skills that they might have within the region?
I think just giving them, like we've got a team. I work with Dimitri and Rose and and Andy, and there is a team of people we've got now, and just we're making as much films as we can now. Like I've made 3 so far this year, which is great considering COVID, but maybe some more training. Networking is a big thing. We are social people in the media. We love socially, just gathering. I know it's been a bit kind of bad because you can't with COVID, but I think just more talking and just kind of more, even if it's a project that's costing nothing or £1,000 or 10 grand, just kind of like keeping it local and just getting more people to work together really, and training as well. As I said, like I'm wearing 4 hats, but I might want to go into editing and learn a bit of editing as well, to have my 5th hat. And I know there's other people, I'm sure yourself,
I think training's a big thing.
Yeah.
Like I've done a lot of courses over the years. I either had to go to Galway or Dublin. There's been nothing down, like screenwriting. There's loads of writers around, but there's not many screenwriters or playwriters either. Playwrights. But training's a big thing. And the second big thing for me is networking.
Like and advice as well.
how did we meet in the end? I can't even remember.
Oh, I can't remember.
But it's hard to get in
Must
touch.
have been a good night.
Yeah, yeah, I think it was a network. I think it might have been Stroke Sound or something. It might have been some kind of reading or something. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, it's very hard to get contacts with
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
We were just
And
lucky.
we were lucky, and like even just to like having the likes of yourself, like, you know, someone you can say, right, I don't know this, but can you help me?
Yeah.
You know, that's a big factor, you know, whether it's insurance, location, contracts or whatever, you know, because like equipment, you know, which is brilliant now because you've got the equipment. I think that's a big thing, because we can make films till the cows come home, but like if we don't know all the kind of other stuff, you know, we're just kind of flying by it. You know?
Well, I know, and at this point, I suppose I should just say, so people listening will know, I mean, where we're at the moment in Creative Heartlands is that we do have the shooting equipment. It has definitely been delayed by COVID in terms of what we could do and the, you know, setting up even events or anything. But actually, I just got word last week that the editing equipment is going to come in place soon. So very soon we will have 3 different editing suites dotted around the region. One will be here in Boyle, and one will be in Manorhamilton, and one will be in Sligo. So hopefully in that way, that they can be, and they're available to anybody in the region. So I would encourage somebody that, you know, is from Sligo, if they need to use something in Boyle, they can. You know, it's a region that has 3 production centres, and the equipment, of course, is available. And of course, the equipment was used to produce Skylark, and that's its function. You know, and in terms of do you do any special events to draw in your animators, because you obviously specialize in 2D animation, and there's been a big move towards computer animation, you know.
Yeah.
Does that present a difficulty for you?
I don't know. I know everyone's going CG. We went like, no, let's say hand drawn. We're actually like we're going backwards in time, because our stuff has a sort of a 90s aesthetic to what we do. It just does. But I think it's knowing your niche as well. I mean, we do 2D, so people know us for doing 2D. That's fine. I mean, but I would love to see a CG studio open up around here. I'd love to see a game studio open up. I'd love to see like a 2D rig or stop motion studio open up. I think there's space for loads of these places to open up and establish themselves in the West, and especially in this particular region.
And there has recently been in Sligo, there's been recent development in gaming, you know what I mean? So that's interesting. So, and I think in some ways that there's a convergence of some of the media. Like, it's interesting, you'd worked in you know, radio, and you'd worked in plays, and you transitioned into film, and now you work across all genres. You know, that there's that. You know what I mean? And maybe you need to start writing a few games, Rose.
Oh.
You know what I mean? And
wouldn't know where to start.
I mean, that's where great content comes from, is when people collaborate and move over, and, you know, it's bringing that skill from like from writing radio plays and bringing it into the animation or the games, and that's when the mixes and the innovation happens. When these skills and start collaborating and start creating something new. Like, I always like, was I listening to think about West Side Story, how it was like a stage writer, a dance choreographer, and a filmmaker, or whatever, put together.
Oh, really?
They came up, it was like, so they brought their skills from these different areas into one, and made them the greatest stage plays of all time. I haven't seen it, but you know what I mean. So it is those things of like those mix of skills that come together and have more collaboration.
And yeah, I know. And look, COVID has obviously been a problem. That's maybe a slight understatement. We know that. I mean, this event ideally should have been done where there's maybe, you know, 20 people out there listening, and then we could talk to them, and then we could meet afterwards and have a coffee, and from that relationships can develop, you know. So what I can say is that like within Creative Heartlands, we will try and set up as we can, as and when we open up. We're at obviously the behest of what actually may happen, but also in terms of equipment, I think I would encourage people to come and do it. You guys were great because you came and you said, can we have the equipment? We weren't really set up to let the equipment out, but we did it, and now there's a movie made. So I think, you know, people need to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing for things. And as regards difficulty, because we can't live in the kind of a bubble of Pollyanna-ish. I mean, what has been the greatest difficulties? Is it the funding of films? Is that, I mean, it's the age-old problem we know, and that's something that within Creative Heartlands we can't solve. But I mean, how do you go about getting your film made?
Well, this is the second film I done with Christine, right? And in 2020 we did Expiry Date, which was the theme was elder abuse. It was a shorter shoot, but like everyone did that for nothing. It was in the post-production, we got a little bit of funding off the older People's Council in Roscommon because they believed in the film, and a bit off Roscommon Council itself for the post-production. This film was a different story because it was so much more involved, and there was annual wranglers and people coming from all over. So you definitely, like, if you have a good budget, you can do better work. You can get better. Like, we needed a bigger crew. It was an awful big heavy workload. I have to say, every single person involved in that film gave 110%. Every single one of them. You couldn't ask for more. It was, you know, all of them, little Mally and everything, every single one of them. But we could have did with another 3 or 4 people there,
at least,
and to lighten the workload, but we hadn't got it because we just hadn't got the funds. And it's a big problem, and there's not many places that you can approach for funding, even within the filmmaking. There's not, you know, there's like Film Ireland. There's not many.
No, it is a difficulty, and I'm aware that sometimes, at some stages, for entry-level people, for people who are trying to start off and trying to do a film and trying to do a short film, you know, I mean, the sector, the film and television sector is doing very well in Ireland. But the problem is then turning that over and getting people coming through and finding a pitch at a certain kind of level, you know. I mean, for you guys in terms of animation, is it the age-old problem again of sourcing, you know, commissions and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose like you have to look at, like, I personally think, like, I mean, given like the size of our country, the support we have for film and television is quite high compared to like most countries. So, you know, it might be kind of against the grain in terms of saying that, but I mean, like what Screen Training was done in terms of training during the COVID lockdown was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
The effort they've put in there was just like stellar. I mean, I've heard people from other countries going, get on to Screen Ireland's training because it's free and it's online and it's brilliant. And like, I mean, Screen Ireland have a budget to work with, and I think they do stellar work there in terms of what they do. I do agree more funding has to happen in the region, whether that's self for myself or for other people. It's I think it does need to happen. However, like there are a lot, like the RAP funds there, like we've got that to help. I mean, there's so much support and those things happen. And there is a want for things to happen. I think no matter, and this is probably the producer's point of view, but no matter how much money you have for a creative project, you'll always want more.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds like glib not to say that, but like if you're given like €1 million budget, you go, oh, wouldn't be great to have 2 million. It's just natural that people always go, oh, we need more resources. But you know, great creative comes from like just going to do it anyway. You know, and without like the fear of like, oh, it's easy to say, we haven't got the budget, we can't do something cool. But I look at what Spielberg done in the 80s, some of the stuff, and you're like, hold on, like, you know, that was a rubber shark. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, it's easy to say you want more budget. And look, obviously we need budgets to make films. People need to get paid. However, like we are in the creative industries, and thinking creatively around things is part of a thing. And sometimes having like an abundance of resources destroys creativity and innovation more than anything else. You know, so I think it's how the money is spent is as important as having the money. You know?
It is. I totally agree. It's how it's spent, and like we just went for it, didn't we? We just went for it. We got a little bit of funding off Roscommon Council, Creative Ireland, Longford, and hopefully we look for finishing funds for post production off a few places. But I said it's now or never, because I have the script a long time, and there was people that was doing it before, but this, that, and during I knew Christine really wanted to direct it. This is right. Let's just do it.
But this is exactly it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get the right people together who want to prepare this creative project, and fund them be damned, you're going to make it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, obviously we haven't got paid for it, it'd be fantastic, but it is a whole want to make something
Yeah.
thing. And I think what happens, and maybe something that we sort of bring out more and try to find some way of doing it in the Heartlands is like making it safe for people to just go make stuff and making them think, I'm not going to make it for a massive budget, I'll make it for 50 quid. See what we can make, and just exploring that and people do that. And just be open to do that, because it's very easy to say, oh, I couldn't get the fund, I'm not making it. But I'm a writer. Once you're writing, oh, no, well, just giving people the opportunity to make something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is key. I mean, that's part of the reason, the raison d'etre really of Creative Heartlands. I mean, you guys, because you had so little budget, were able to get that equipment, and you know, you didn't have to pay for that equipment. So that's what we're there to try and do, to facilitate somebody getting the thing made. And that's the same of the edit suites when they come online in the next few weeks, we hope. That, you know, they are available as a resource. You know, I mean, our view is that if people are getting funding for their projects, we will ask for some payback on that, because it helps them projects like you who have no funding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but the thing is, if those resources are there, people should be asking for them a lot. So, I mean, I am encouraging people to come in and do that. And likewise, you said in terms of training, this is a kind of forced event. We may do more events, we get more people in to motivate and stimulate discussions. Hopefully we'll be able to get people attending. But I mean, when it comes to training or what people want, it's good to listen. You said that would be nice to get some training locally. I'll take that away, and I will develop some script writing training programs that, you know, that will deal with that. And I will probably come to you, Stephen, and say, well, let's get an element of script writing that's shorts, features, and actually animation, because these things are coalescing, you know. So, I mean, the impetus has to come, I think, from the community rather than being passive, you know what I mean? So I would be encouraging people to kind of come. So sorry, I'm off on a rant to try and get people in. You know,
I mean, that's back to the term intelligence use of funds. Like setting up 3 edit suites is perfect, because like that's a long-term sustainable thing. You're not just funding one project; you're actually supporting multiple projects by having those facilities in place in 3 areas where they might not be available. You know, and so it's like that's a good use of funding, isn't it? Because if people go, okay, I don't know how to edit, I'm going to go to the edit suite, I'm going to learn how to edit, and I'm going to make me film. And it's like you're taking so many boxes there and so many all around, and the edit suite will be there 5 to 10 years time, hopefully. And
it's brilliant.
so it's long lasting.
and people have to try. I mean, it's a kind of can-do type of thing. You know, like you've made 3 films during the COVID period, and you probably have not received necessary fundings to do it to the level that you wanted. But you could either sit at home complaining about the fact that I can't make it, or you can make it. So you've 3 films, you know, in the can. Actually, some of those films have gone out and gone to festivals. And I know Skylark is we're just about to go into post. So there's an element of, you need that kind of impetus coming from the bottom up, you know what I mean, like to an extent.
Absolutely. You know? I mean, look, someone's in film college or a media college says, just go, here's a camera, go tell a story, you know. So I mean, there's no reason why we can't have the same effect here with people with films, go tell a story. And just, you know, and I mean, we're just offering massive, say, oh, here's the camera, go tell the story.
And also it's great to have like on the job training as well, like all the films that we've done, you know, you haven't got a producer's background, but you've trained and learned on the job, like, you know. And there's been other people as well that we've worked with, you know, and they've always said, thanks, I've learned loads from you. And I felt like, that's what you kind of need. You know, you can go to college, you know, you can study textbook, but if you're not physically doing it as well, like, and that needs to be the opportunity for short films, feature films within the region for them to do it. You know, so there needs to be more of that, so that the people can do it and say, oh, well, I fancy directing or whatever. Is there an opportunity? I fancy firsting, I fancy sound editing, you know, there's editing suites coming up, I fancy that, you know, how can I do it? You know, I've come out of college, uni, whatever, you know, it's on the job training is
yeah, and you get better when you do it. I presume, like, you know, you're a better filmmaker now than you were, you know, when you did your first film. You know what I mean? And you have to build that up. You can't go from learning how to drive to suddenly getting into a 40-foot articulated truck. You know what I mean? Like, that's rare that happens. They are kind of unicorns, people who do that. You know, you have to build up your driving miles,
Yeah,
you know, and you do
exactly.
that by making stuff. So and the reason I asked you tonight is because you're an example of there's lots of reasons why your films couldn't get made, but the point is they did get made. You know, you've got the difficulty of finding a lot of people and a lot of costs to make a studio, and you said, why the hell would you base yourself in Boyle? But you have done that, and it hasn't stopped you making television series.
Well, yeah, and suppose like, I mean, I always I go back to this all the time. It was like I had a studio in Dublin. I was part of that. It was a great experience and all the rest. But think about it, like having a studio in the West and having a studio here. Like most of my clients, our clients would be international, would be like UK, US, so on. Like I don't produce a piece of content for like say €20 million budget in Dublin. It's a drop in the ocean, it goes nowhere. But like you start creating content in the regions here, like a €1 million project from the UK or from the US as a service project, a co-production or whatever, and it comes into a small little town, or like it's town like the size of Boyle maybe, that's massive. That's €1 million into a town. If that money just filters to the staff and goes out into the town and pays for rent, pays for groceries, pays for.
Well, Moonboy must have made a difference when it was here and so forth.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, in terms of like the potential of the creative industries in the region, like what can possibly do for them to develop the whole region in terms of like just bringing money into the country, not even from the cities that are already big, just taking relocating the cash somewhere else, but like having a creative industry in the west of Ireland that can actually sustain itself and bring money in and build its own creative economy, and then just and as a result funds everything around it. Like, it just makes perfect sense.
It's a great spot because there's loads of locations, loads of brilliant locations, beautiful spots that you could.
Absolutely.
You know, it's there's no reason why, and there's more people as well that we don't even know about. That that's why I'm saying it'd be great to do a network, have a database of people's skills and.
Okay. Well, we kind of come to the end of our time here, and it's nice to end on that positive note. I think we've talked about some of the difficulties, but the trick is to not let the difficulties dictate what's going to happen. That sometimes you've got to push through it. Things are not going to be perfect, and we'll try and you try and make stuff anyway. So we'll finish off by saying that in Creative Heartlands, I'm open to receiving suggestions, like through the SLR Facebook page and creativeheartlands@gmail.com. I'm open for suggestions to come in about other events like this. We will try to do other networking events as and when they happen, and our equipment will come on stream. And after that, it's kind of up to you. We've opened up little elements of the factory, but the ideas that are going to produce it to be in the factory are going to have to come from yourselves. You know what I mean? So
Could you not do it for us?
well, in terms of what I think we will also look to do is maybe develop some mentoring systems so that when people are starting, that they can actually talk to somebody who's a little bit more experienced, like your first time produce in some ways, Rose. If you had somebody you could talk to, I mean, you end up talking to me, but I'm sure you'll find much better people to talk to. So that's the kind of thing that we can kind of do. I mean, like some of the experience like Stephen, there might be somebody in Sligo who wants to animate. If they can talk to you and they can go off and do their own little project, that's useful, So we're it's a collaborative business, that's a people business. So we should try and work together as best we can, you know. So on that, I'd like to thank Stephen from Studio Media. We were discussing how we would describe it. Rose Byrne, a writer and producer, and Christine Braithwaite, writer, producer, director. She does everything. So thank you for tonight, and it will be available to podcast, I hope, and hopefully it's recorded. I don't know, it's the first time we've done this technically. We could be talking into the void. I don't know.
This is take 15.
Okay, so with that, I'll say thank you, everyone, and I'm going to sign off now. So that's it. Okay, thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.